The wind moved slowly through the branches of an ancient tree. A tree no one in that town had touched for decades. When a broken veteran returned to that forgotten place, his dog didn't run, didn't explore. It walked straight to that tree and started digging. Not randomly, but like it knew exactly where to stop. And when the man finally uncovered what was buried beneath those roots, he realized it wasn't just money. It was a secret. Someone had spent years trying to keep hidden. So why did no one ever dig there before? And what kind of father would bury the truth instead of telling his own son? Before we begin, I hope you're safe, warm, and at peace wherever you are tonight. And if this story means something to you, consider subscribing. Let's begin. A thin gray sky hung low over the forgotten land, and a slow wind drifted through the branches of an ancient tree at the center of the clearing. The air smelled of damp soil and old wood, quiet in a way that felt almost watchful. Noah Carter stood still for a long moment before stepping forward. He was a man carved by time and service, 46 years old, with a face that carried both strength and weariness. His jawline was sharp but weathered, faint stubble shadowing his cheeks, and his hazel-brown eyes had the distant look of someone who had seen too much and learned not to talk about it. His short hair, once darker, now carried streaks of gray near the temples. He wore a long-sleeved green and black plaid shirt, faded from years of use, tucked loosely into black jeans, and a pair of worn brown leather shoes that had clearly walked more miles than they should have. He adjusted the strap of the old duffel bag slung over his shoulder and exhaled slowly. This place, it wasn't how he remembered it. The cabin stood ahead of him, smaller than memory allowed. The wood was cracked and dry, the paint long gone, and the porch sagged slightly under its own age. Tall grass swallowed what used to be a path. Time hadn't just passed here. It had settled in and taken over. But the tree, that tree hadn't changed. It rose from the center of the land like a silent sentinel, its thick trunk twisted with age, its branches stretching wide and heavy. The roots pushed up through the soil, gnarled and powerful, like veins trying to break free from the earth. Noah narrowed his eyes slightly. Strange. Everything else had fallen apart. But that tree still stood like it belonged to something older than the land itself. Behind him, a car door shut with a dull sound. A German shepherd stepped out and landed softly on the ground. Atlas. He was large, strong, and still carried the posture of a trained working dog. His coat was a deep black across the back, blending into rich tan along his legs and face. His ears stood upright, alert, and his amber-brown eyes moved with quiet intelligence. There was a scar along his right shoulder, barely visible beneath the fur, a reminder of a past neither of them talked about. Atlas wasn't just a companion. He had been trained alongside Noah during his final years in service, a dog who had once been labeled too attached because he refused to leave Noah's side during drills. That same flaw had kept him alive more than once. Noah glanced at him and gave a faint, tired smile. Well, this is it, huh? Atlas didn't wag his tail, didn't run toward the cabin, didn't explore the land. Instead, he walked forward slowly, passing Noah, moving with purpose across the clearing. Noah frowned slightly and turned to watch him. That's new. Atlas kept going, step by step, straight toward the tree. Noah felt something tighten in his chest, though he didn't know why. Maybe it was just exhaustion. Maybe it was the silence. Or maybe it was the way Atlas moved. Not curious, not distracted, but certain. The dog stopped at the base of the ancient tree. Then he stood still, completely still. Noah took a few steps closer, boots pressing softly into the uneven ground. His knee ached with every movement, a dull, familiar pain that never really left him. The injury had ended his career, just like that. One explosion, one wrong step. And suddenly, the man who spent decades building things in war zones couldn't even stand for long without feeling it. He stopped a few feet behind Atlas. "You hear something, boy?" Atlas didn't respond. His ears twitched slightly, adjusting to something Noah couldn't hear. His gaze remained fixed on the ground, right where the roots disappeared into the soil. The wind shifted, then stopped. Noah noticed it immediately. The clearing went quiet, too quiet. No birds, no distant sounds, just a strange, heavy stillness that pressed down on everything. Noah's expression hardened slightly. He had felt silence like this before, in places far from home, moments before something went wrong. His eyes dropped to the ground. The soil around the roots looked off, not fresh, not disturbed recently, but not natural either. There were faint irregularities, slight dips and rises, as if the earth had once been moved, then carefully put back. Noah crouched down slowly, his knee protesting the motion. He reached out and brushed his fingers lightly across the dirt. It felt compact, but uneven beneath the surface. He paused. A memory flickered at the edge of his mind. His father. A man of few words. Broad-shouldered, quiet, with rough hands that always smelled of soil and metal. He had owned this land long before Noah left for the military. A man who fixed things, built things, and sometimes kept things to himself. Noah swallowed. "What were you doing out here, Dad?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. Behind him, the cabin creaked softly as the wind returned. Noah stood up slowly, wincing as he straightened his leg. He let out a quiet breath and shook his head. "Doesn't matter. Not yet." There were more immediate problems. No power, no running water. A roof that looked like it might collapse if the weather turned bad. He turned toward the cabin. "Come on, Atlas." But the dog didn't move. Noah stopped, looked back. Atlas was still there, standing under the tree, unmoving, watching the ground like it held something important. Noah stared at him for a long second, then gave a small shake of his head. "Suit yourself." He walked toward the cabin, each step deliberate. The porch groaned beneath his weight as he climbed up. The door resisted at first, stuck from years of neglect, before finally giving way with a sharp crack. Dust filled the air. The smell hit him instantly. Old wood, closed space, time. Noah stepped inside and dropped his bag near the wall. "This is home now," he said quietly. The words didn't feel real, not yet. He moved through the room slowly, eyes scanning everything. The furniture was still there, covered in dust but untouched. A table, a chair, a fireplace that hadn't been used in years. It wasn't much, but it was something. And right now, something was all he had. He stood there in the silence, listening to his own breathing. 30 years of service, gone. A marriage that once felt unbreakable, gone. A life he thought he understood, gone. Noah leaned one hand against the wall and closed his eyes briefly. "Yeah," he muttered under his breath. "Good restart." outside, under the ancient tree. Atlas finally moved, one step forward, then another. He lowered his head slowly, pressing his nose into the soil where the roots twisted deep into the earth. His ears shifted again, listening, sensing something. Then, without hesitation, Atlas began to dig. The morning came slowly, like the land itself wasn't ready to wake up. A pale light filtered through the cracked windows of the cabin, settling over dust and silence. Noah Carter sat on the edge of the old wooden chair, elbows resting on his knees, staring at the floor as if the answers might be hidden somewhere between the cracks of the wood. He hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt that strange stillness again, the one that wrapped itself around the ancient tree. And Atlas, he hadn't come inside until well after midnight. Noah glanced toward the door. The German shepherd was already awake, sitting upright, alert as ever. His amber eyes met Noah's, calm but focused. "Yeah," Noah muttered, pushing himself up with a slight grimace as his knee stiffened. "We need supplies." Atlas stood immediately, tail low but steady, ready to move. The two stepped outside together. The morning air was cool, carrying the scent of pine and damp soil. Noah paused for a moment and looked toward the tree. The ground where Atlas had dug was still disturbed, the loose dirt darker than the surrounding earth. He frowned, then forced himself to turn away. Not yet. The road into town hadn't changed much either. It was a narrow stretch of cracked asphalt winding through tall trees, with patches of gravel where time had eaten away at it. Noah drove in silence, his old pickup rattling slightly with every bump. Atlas sat in the passenger seat, upright, watching the road like he was still on duty. The town of Pine Hollow appeared slowly through the trees. Small, quiet. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and strangers didn't stay strangers for long. Noah parked in front of a general store. The building was old but maintained, with a wooden sign swinging gently above the door. As he stepped inside, the bell above the entrance gave a soft ring. Conversations stopped, not abruptly, but enough to be noticed. Noah felt it immediately, eyes on him, curious, guarded, some familiar, but not welcoming. Behind the counter stood a woman in her early 50s, her posture straight, movements precise. Her name was Margaret Collins, though most people simply called her Maggie. She had short silver hair cut neatly around her face, sharp cheekbones, and pale blue eyes that missed nothing. Her skin was weathered, not from neglect, but from years of working under the sun. She wasn't unkind, but she was careful. Life had taught her that. Maggie looked at Noah for a moment longer than necessary before speaking. "Haven't seen you in a long time," she said, her voice calm but measured. Noah gave a small nod. "Just got back." He stepped forward, placing a few items on the counter. "Need some basics, food, tools if you have any left." Maggie's eyes shifted briefly to Atlas, who stood just behind Noah, still and watchful. "Dog looks well trained," she added. Noah glanced back at Atlas. "He is." A short pause followed. Maggie began ringing up the items, but her movement slowed slightly. "You staying up on Carter land?" she asked. Noah hesitated for a fraction of a second. "Yeah." That was all it took. The air changed. A man sitting near the window shifted in his seat. Another lowered his voice mid-sentence. It wasn't fear exactly, but it wasn't normal either. Maggie stopped briefly, her fingers resting on the edge of the counter. "That place," she began, then stopped herself. "It's been empty a long time." Noah leaned one hand against the counter. "I noticed." Maggie met his eyes, and for a moment, something almost like concern flickered there. But it vanished just as quickly. "Just be careful what you go looking for," she said quietly. Before Noah could respond, the door behind him opened again. A man stepped in with the kind of presence that made people shift without realizing why. Victor Hale. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his posture straight and confident. His hair was dark, streaked lightly with gray, styled neatly. A trimmed beard framed a face that might have been handsome once, but now carried something colder beneath the surface. His eyes were sharp, calculating, and always moving. He wore a clean, button-up shirt, sleeves rolled just enough to show control without effort. Victor was the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. "Well," Victor said with a smooth, almost amused tone, "if it isn't Noah Carter." Noah turned slowly. "Victor." The two men stood facing each other, the silence stretching just long enough to matter. Victor stepped closer, his gaze flicking briefly toward Atlas. "You've come back," he said. Not a question, a statement. Noah nodded once. "Looks that way." Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "And staying long?" Noah held his gaze. "That depends." Victor tilted his head slightly, studying him. "On what?" Noah didn't answer immediately. "On whether this place still has anything left worth staying for." Victor let out a soft chuckle. "That land's been picked clean a long time ago." He leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice just enough that only Noah could hear. "Wouldn't go digging around too much, if I were you." Noah's expression didn't change. "Didn't know I needed permission." Victor straightened, smile returning. "Just friendly advice." He stepped back, nodding toward Maggie. "Put it on my tab," he added casually, gesturing to Noah's items. Noah shook his head. "I've got it." Victor paused, then gave a small shrug. "Suit yourself." He turned and walked out, the bell ringing softly behind him. The tension lingered after he left. Noah paid and gathered his supplies. Maggie handed him the bag, her eyes meeting his again. "You didn't hear it from me," she said quietly, "but people around here don't forget things. They just stop talking about them." Noah nodded once. "I've seen worse." He turned and left. The drive back felt longer. When he pulled into the clearing, something immediately felt wrong. Not obvious, not loud, just off. Noah stepped out of the truck slowly, eyes scanning the area. The cabin was the same, the ground, the same. But Atlas wasn't moving. The dog stood near the tree again, completely still. Noah walked toward him, slower this time. "What is it?" he murmured. Atlas didn't look at him. His gaze was fixed on the trunk. Noah followed it and saw it. A small black object, no bigger than a thumb, partially hidden against the bark. Noah stepped closer, reached out, pulled it free. A camera. New. Clean. Placed carefully. Facing the exact spot where the ground had been disturbed. Noah's grip tightened slightly. This hadn't been here yesterday. He turned slowly, scanning the tree line. The wind moved again, brushing through the branches like nothing had changed. But something had. Someone was watching. And they hadn't started until after he came back. Atlas let out a low, quiet growl. Not loud, not aggressive. just enough to say one thing clearly. They were not alone anymore. The rain came without warning, rolling in from the hills, like a curtain drawn across the sky. By late afternoon, the clearing had turned dark and heavy, clouds pressing low as if the world itself was holding its breath. Water struck the roof of the cabin in steady waves, dripping through cracks in the wood, pooling slowly on the uneven floor. Outside, the ancient tree stood unmoved, its branches swaying just enough to whisper, not enough to bend. Noah Carter stood near the doorway, watching the storm. He had changed into dry clothes earlier, the same green and black plaid shirt now slightly darker from damp air, sleeves rolled loosely to his forearms. His posture was still strong, but there was a stiffness to the way he shifted his weight, favoring the leg that never fully healed. His face, lit faintly by the gray light, looked more worn today. Not older, just heavier, like something had begun pressing down on him again. Behind him, Atlas paced slowly across the cabin floor, restless. The German shepherd had not settled since they found the camera. His ears flicked at every sound, his movements sharper, more alert than usual. He paused near the door, then looked back at Noah. Noah exhaled slowly. "Yeah, I feel it too." Another crack of thunder rolled across the valley. The rain intensified, hammering the ground outside. Then Atlas moved. Fast, the dog bolted through the open doorway before Noah could react. "Atlas!" Noah called out, stepping forward. But the dog was already halfway across the clearing, heading straight for the tree. Noah cursed under his breath and followed, limping slightly as he pushed through the wet grass. The rain soaked through his shirt within seconds, clinging to his skin, but he didn't stop. Atlas had reached the tree and was already digging. Not like before, not careful, not curious. This was different, urgent, desperate. Mud flew behind him as his paws tore into the softened earth. The rain had changed the ground. What was once compact and resistant was now loose, giving way under pressure. Noah reached the base of the tree, breathing harder than he expected. His knee throbbed sharply, but he ignored it. "What is it, boy?" he said, dropping to one knee despite the pain. Atlas didn't stop. Noah leaned forward and began digging with his hands, pushing mud aside. The soil felt wrong, too soft at the top, too firm underneath, like layers that didn't belong together. He scraped deeper, fingers hitting something solid, metal. He froze for a second, then cleared more dirt away. A narrow edge of something dark and flat emerged from beneath the mud. Rainwater ran over it, washing away dirt, revealing a dull, weathered surface. Noah's pulse quickened. "Easy," he muttered, more to himself than to the dog. Atlas stepped back slightly, watching him now, breathing hard but focused. Noah used both hands, clearing more of the surface. The shape became clearer, not a random piece of scrap, not debris, a plate, large, flat, deliberately placed. Noah wiped the mud away with the sleeve of his shirt. For a brief moment, lightning flashed overhead, illuminating the surface in stark white light. And that's when he saw it. A faint marking. Worn, almost gone, but still there. His breath caught. No way. The symbol was unmistakable. Military. Specifically, Army Corps of Engineers. Noah leaned back slightly, his mind racing. His father. It had to be connected. It couldn't be coincidence. Not here. Not like this. A sharp sound cut through the rain. Footsteps. Noah's head snapped up. Too late. Something slammed into him from the side, knocking him off balance. His injured knee buckled immediately, and he hit the ground hard, the air leaving his lungs in a rough gasp. Mud splashed across his face as he rolled instinctively, trying to regain position. Two men stood a few feet away. Both wore dark jackets, hoods pulled low against the rain. One was taller, lean with sharp features barely visible under the shadow, his posture loose but controlled. The other was heavier, broader, with thick arms and a stance that suggested he relied more on strength than speed. Their faces were partially hidden, but their movements were deliberate. Not random, not panicked. They had been waiting. "Told you he'd start digging," the taller one muttered, voice low, almost annoyed. The heavier man stepped forward, cracking his knuckles slightly. "Doesn't look like he knows what it is." Noah pushed himself up slightly, one hand pressed into the mud, the other bracing his leg. Pain shot through his knee, but he forced himself to stay upright. His eyes moved between them, calculating. "You boys lost?" he said, voice rough but steady. The taller man smirked faintly. "Wrong place to be asking questions." The heavy one moved closer. "You should have listened. This land ain't yours to dig." Noah's jaw tightened. "Pretty sure it is." The man lunged forward. Noah tried to shift, but his leg gave out again. The hit came fast, a hard blow to his shoulder that sent him back into the ground. He gritted his teeth trying to roll, but another kick followed, catching him in the ribs. Then, a blur of motion. Atlas. The German shepherd launched forward with a force that caught both men off guard. His teeth locked onto the heavy man's arm, clamping down with precision and strength. The man shouted, stumbling backward, trying to shake him off. "Get it off! Get it off!" The taller man stepped forward, reaching for something at his side, but Atlas released and moved again, fast, circling, forcing distance. His growl cut through the rain, low and dangerous, his body positioned between Noah and the attackers, not wild, controlled, trained. Noah forced himself to one knee, breathing hard. "That's enough," he muttered under his breath, though he wasn't sure if he meant it for the dog or the men. The taller one hesitated, eyes narrowing as he assessed the situation. This wasn't going how they expected. Not anymore. "Forget it," he said finally. "Not worth it." The heavy man clutched his arm, cursing under his breath, blood mixing with rainwater. He backed away slowly, eyes locked on Atlas. "This ain't over," he spat. Then they were gone, disappearing into the trees as quickly as they came. The clearing fell silent again, broken only by the steady rain. Atlas didn't move. He stood there, still growling softly, watching the direction they left, making sure they were truly gone. Noah let out a long breath and pushed himself fully upright, wincing as he tested his weight. "You good?" he asked, looking at the dog. Atlas turned his head slightly. There was a cut along his shoulder, not deep, but enough to draw blood. Noah's expression tightened. "Yeah, you're fine. I've seen worse." He reached out, resting a hand briefly on the dog's neck. Atlas leaned into it for a second, then pulled back, attention already shifting again. Back to the ground, back to the metal. Noah followed his gaze. The rain had washed away more dirt now, exposing a larger portion of the plate. It wasn't small, not a fragment. It was a cover, a door. Noah stepped closer, heart pounding harder now, not from the fight, but from something else entirely. Understanding. He crouched again, slower this time, careful with his leg. His fingers traced the edge of the metal. It was thick, industrial, built to last. He wiped away more mud. The marking became clearer. United States Army Corps of Engineers. Noah sat back slightly, the realization settling in. This isn't just buried junk. Atlas let out a low growl again, softer this time. Not at the forest, at the ground. Noah stared at the metal plate, at the tree above it, at the roots that had grown around it, hiding it, protecting it. And for the first time since he returned, the thought came clearly. His father didn't just live here. He built something here, something that was never meant to be found. Unless it was found by the right person. The rain eased into a thin, steady drizzle by late evening, but the ground remained soft and dark around the ancient tree. Noah Carter stood over the exposed metal plate, breathing slowly as if steadying himself against something deeper than the cold. Mud clung to his green and black plaid shirt and soaked into his black jeans. His hands were raw from digging, knuckles scraped, nails packed with dirt. Atlas stood at his side, coat damp, amber eyes fixed on the plate with a focus that hadn't wavered since the fight. Noah crouched, testing the edge again. The metal didn't shift at first. He ran his fingers along the perimeter and found a narrow seam, nearly invisible under years of soil and roots. "It's a hatch," he murmured, more certain now. He glanced back toward the cabin, then toward the tree line where the attackers had disappeared. And somebody didn't want it opened. Atlas let out a quiet breath through his nose, then stepped closer, paw resting on the edge as if urging him forward. Noah limped back to the cabin and returned with a rusted pry bar he'd found near the wall earlier. It was old, but solid. He wedged the tip beneath the lip of the plate and pressed down, jaw tightening as his knee flared with pain. The metal groaned faintly. He adjusted his grip, leaned harder. Another low creak answered him. Atlas circled once, then stilled again, watching the tree line between movements. Noah paused, listening. Only the whisper of rain. No footsteps. No engines. Just the soft, endless hush of water on leaves. "All right," he said, and pushed again. The seal broke with a dull, hollow sound that echoed from beneath the ground. Cold air rose from the opening, stale and still, carrying a faint scent of metal and dust that didn't belong to the forest. Noah froze for a second, then slowly lifted the hatch. It was heavier than he expected, thick steel set into reinforced edges. He dragged it aside just enough to reveal a square opening cut clean into the earth. A ladder descended into darkness. Noah swallowed. "You seeing this?" he said quietly. Atlas stepped forward, peering down, ears upright, body angled as if ready to move at a moment's notice. Noah reached into his pocket and pulled out a small flashlight, flicking it on. The beam cut through the dark, revealing concrete walls, a metal ladder, and a floor about 15 feet below. The space looked intact, not collapsed, not flooded, preserved. "Of course," Noah whispered. "Of course it's intact." He tested the ladder with his boot. It held. He glanced at Atlas. "Stay up here," he said out of habit. Atlas didn't move. Noah exhaled softly. "Yeah, I know." He began descending one rung at a time, his movements careful but steady. The air grew cooler as he dropped, thicker somehow, like it hadn't moved in decades. His boots touched concrete with a muted thud. He turned slowly, sweeping the light across the room. The bunker was larger than he expected. Not massive, but structured. Reinforced concrete walls lined with steel supports. The ceiling low but stable. Dust coated everything in a thick layer, undisturbed. Along one side stood wooden crates, stacked neatly, their surfaces marked with faded black stencils. On the far end sat a metal desk, its top buried under papers and folders. Against another wall stood a heavy safe, its dark surface scratched but intact. Noah's breath slowed. "Dad? What did you build?" Above him, Atlas barked once, then began climbing down with careful precision. The dog landed beside him and immediately started moving, nose low, tracing the edges of the room, checking corners, alert but controlled. Noah stepped toward the crates first. He brushed away dust with his sleeve, revealing letters beneath. United States Army Corps of Engineers. The same symbol he had seen on the hatch. His chest tightened slightly. He forced one crate open. Inside were sealed containers, wrapped in plastic, untouched. Tools, radios, equipment that still looked usable. "This isn't a storage shed," he muttered. "This is a site." Atlas moved toward the desk, sniffing, then sat, looking back at Noah as if to say there was more. Noah approached slowly. The papers were brittle with age. He lifted the top sheet carefully. Blueprints, engineering diagrams, coordinates. His eyes scanned quickly, mind shifting back into the patterns he hadn't used in years. Measurements, structural notes, load calculations. Everything precise, everything deliberate. Then a title caught his eye. Relocation Project. He frowned, flipped to the next page. Lists, names, addresses, dates. Noah's expression hardened as he read. Families relocated, land acquisition under federal authority, displacement records, and besides some names, annotations. Unresolved, pending, missing. He lowered the paper slowly. This doesn't make sense. Atlas let out a low, uneasy sound. Noah turned, scanning the rest of the documents. There were dozens of files, more lists, more notes, some pages torn, others marked with red ink. A pattern began forming in his mind, one he didn't want to complete. "This wasn't just relocation," he said quietly. "Something went wrong." He stepped back, rubbing a hand across his face. His heart had started beating faster. Not from fear, from recognition. This was the kind of work he had done, the kind of projects he had seen from the inside, controlled, classified, hidden behind layers of paperwork that never told the full truth. He moved toward the wall where a map hung. Dust fell as he brushed it away. The region spread out across faded paper. Several locations circled, one marked directly over the ridge behind the cabin. This place, Atlas barked softly again, drawing his attention back. The dog stood near the safe now, paw scraping lightly against its base. Noah walked over. The safe was large, military grade, old, but solid. He ran his hand across the surface, feeling the cold metal beneath his fingers. The locking mechanism was intact, though worn. "What's in here?" he whispered. His mind drifted for a moment, back to his father, a man who rarely explained anything, who worked long hours and came home with dirt under his nails and silence in his eyes, a man who had taught him how to fix things, but never told him what he was fixing out here. Noah swallowed. "You knew," he said under his breath. "You knew all of it." His chest tightened suddenly. The bunker walls seemed closer, the air heavier. For a second, the smell of dust shifted into something else. Hot metal, smoke, the echo of an explosion. His breath shortened, quick, uneven, his hand clenched against the edge of the safe as the memory surged forward without warning. Sand, heat, a convoy, the sound of something tearing through the air. Noah squeezed his eyes shut, jaw tightening. Not now. Atlas moved instantly. The dog stepped close, pressing his body against Noah's leg, grounding him. Solid, real, present. Noah opened his eyes slowly. The bunker returned, the concrete walls, the quiet, the safe beneath his hand. He exhaled, long and slow. Yeah, I'm here. Atlas stayed there for a moment longer, then stepped back, eyes still on him. Noah nodded once. Good. He looked at the safe again. Then down at the floor beside it, something caught his eye. A folded piece of paper wedged slightly under the base. He crouched and pulled it free. The paper was older than the rest. Thinner, worn at the edges. Handwritten. His chest tightened again as he recognized the writing. His father's. Noah unfolded it carefully. The words were simple, direct, no wasted space. If anything happens, this must be found by the right person. Noah stared at the line for a long moment, then looked up slowly, at the bunker, at the files, at the safe. This wasn't just hidden, he whispered. It was meant to be found. Atlas shifted again, pawing at the safe more insistently now. Noah let out a quiet breath. All right, he said, voice steadier now. Let's see what you're so interested in. He set the note aside, reached for the handle, and began to work the lock. The next morning did not feel like a new beginning. It felt like pressure, quiet, constant, closing in from every direction. A thin fog hung low across the clearing, softening the edges of the land, but not the tension that had settled overnight. Noah Carter stood on the porch, wearing his green and black plaid shirt, sleeves rolled, black jeans still marked with dried mud from the night before. His face looked harder now, more focused, but beneath that, there was something else. A weight that hadn't been there when he first arrived. Atlas sat beside him, still as stone, eyes scanning the tree line. Noah took a slow sip from the dented metal cup in his hand. The water tasted slightly off. He frowned, then stepped down from the porch and walked toward the old water pump beside the cabin. He tested it once, twice. Nothing. He leaned closer, inspecting the pipe. The valve had been turned, deliberately. Noah straightened slowly, jaw tightening. That's new. Atlas rose immediately, ears forward. Noah turned toward the road, then back toward the forest. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It felt watched, measured. He moved quickly, grabbing his keys and heading for the truck. Atlas followed without hesitation. The engine started with a rough cough, and within minutes, they were back on the narrow road leading into town. But the town was different, subtle at first, then obvious. Noah stepped into Maggie's store again, the bell ringing the same as yesterday. But the reaction was colder now. Conversations didn't just pause. They ended. People avoided eye contact entirely. Maggie stood behind the counter, her usual calm replaced by something more guarded. I need supplies, Noah said, placing a short list on the counter. Fuel, parts for the pump, maybe a generator if you've got one. Maggie glanced at the paper but didn't touch it. Out, she said simply. Noah's eyes narrowed slightly. Out of everything? She nodded once. Truck didn't come in this week. That's funny, Noah replied quietly. I saw it parked out back. Maggie didn't respond. Her lips pressed into a thin line. From the corner of the store, a man shifted uneasily. A younger guy, maybe late 20s, tall but underweight, with pale skin and nervous hands. His name tag read, Caleb. He avoided Noah's gaze, but his fingers tightened around the edge of a crate he was carrying. Noah looked back at Maggie. "Someone tell you not to sell to me?" Silence. That was answer enough. Noah gave a small nod. "All right." He turned and walked out. Atlas followed close behind. Outside, Noah stood beside his truck, staring down the empty road. His chest felt tight again, not from fear, but from something heavier. Isolation, deliberate, controlled. "They're squeezing," he muttered. The drive back felt longer than before. When he reached the clearing, the second problem was waiting. The lights inside the cabin were out. Noah stepped inside, flipping the switch. Nothing. He moved to the breaker panel. The wires had been cut. Clean. Professional. Not random damage. He let out a slow breath, running a hand across his face. Water's off. Power's gone. Atlas stood in the doorway, watching the outside, not the inside. Always watching the threat. Noah stepped back out, scanning the area. Then he saw it. The road. A pile of dirt and fallen branches now blocked the narrow entrance leading up to the property. It hadn't been there yesterday. No tire tracks leading away. Just a clean obstruction. A message. Noah walked halfway down the path, stopping a few feet from the blockage. He studied it carefully. "This wasn't rushed," he said quietly. Atlas let out a low growl. Noah turned back toward the cabin, the tree visible beyond it. Everything was being cut off. Not violently, not openly. Just enough. Just slowly enough. To make him leave. Noah stood there for a long time. Then finally, he laughed. Not loud, not amused. Just tired. "They want me gone," he said under his breath. "Fine." He turned and walked back toward the cabin. Atlas didn't follow immediately. Instead, the dog remained still for a moment, then turned toward the tree. Again. Noah stepped inside the cabin, dropping his keys onto the table. He leaned forward, hands gripping the edge, head lowering slowly. This wasn't what he came back for. He came here to disappear, to survive quietly. Not to fight another war. Not to uncover something buried in the past. His knee throbbed harder now, the pain sharper with every step he had taken that day. He lowered himself into the chair with a slight grunt, staring at the floor. "I'm too old for this," he muttered. The words felt heavier than they should have. Outside, the wind picked up slightly. Inside, the silence pressed in again. Noah closed his eyes for a moment, and for the first time since returning, the thought came clearly. Maybe I should leave. Maybe this place wasn't meant to be fixed. Maybe his father had buried it all for a reason. Maybe some things were better left alone. A soft sound pulled him back. A slow, steady movement. Noah opened his eyes. Atlas stood in the doorway, watching him, not moving, not leaving, just waiting. Noah exhaled slowly. "Not now, boy." Atlas stepped forward, one step, then another, until he stood directly in front of Noah. The dog lowered his head slightly, then gently nudged Noah's hand. Once, twice, persistent. Noah looked at him. Atlas turned his head, toward the tree, then back at Noah, then again, toward the tree. Noah stared for a long moment, then let out a quiet breath. "Yeah." He pushed himself up, wincing slightly, and walked outside. Atlas moved ahead immediately, straight to the tree, straight to the disturbed ground. Without hesitation, he began digging again. Noah shook his head slightly but stepped closer, kneeling beside him. All right, let's see what you've got. The soil was still loose from the rain, but Atlas wasn't digging at the same spot. A few feet away, near the base, but slightly off. Noah frowned. That's new? He dug alongside him, pushing dirt aside, slower but methodical. Minutes passed. Then, a hollow sound. Noah froze, tapped the ground again. The same echo. Different from before, not solid, not packed. Hold on. He cleared more dirt. A narrow pipe appeared beneath the surface, old, rust-covered, but intact. A vent. Noah's eyes narrowed. This wasn't just one entrance. Atlas barked once, sharp, excited. Noah followed the line of the pipe with his hand, tracing it as it disappeared back toward the ground beneath the tree. His mind shifted quickly now. Layouts, structures, engineering, his training snapping back into place. A secondary access point, he murmured. He sat back slowly, staring at the ground, at the tree, at the hidden structure beneath it. This wasn't random, he said quietly. Atlas stood beside him, tail low but steady. Noah looked at the bunker hatch, then at the vent, then at the surrounding land. Everything aligned, everything connected. His father hadn't just buried something. He had designed it, planned it, protected it, and more importantly, he had made sure someone could find it. Noah let out a slow breath. You didn't hide this from the world, he whispered. You hid it, for the right person. Atlas stepped closer, and for the first time since the pressure began, Noah didn't feel like leaving anymore. By late afternoon, the sky had cleared just enough to let a pale light fall across the clearing, but the air still carried the weight of everything that had happened. Noah Carter stood beside the open hatch again, his green and black plaid shirt now dry but stained, his black jeans marked with dirt and strain, and his brown leather shoes worn deeper into the ground with every step he took. He looked different now, not just tired, sharpened, like a man who had stopped running from something and finally turned to face it. Atlas stood at the edge of the opening, ears forward, tail steady. The dog's presence was constant now, no longer just a companion but something more deliberate. As if he understood that what lay below mattered in ways even Noah had not yet fully grasped. Noah exhaled slowly. All right, let's finish this. He climbed down the ladder again, slower than before, careful with his injured knee. Atlas followed closely, landing beside him without hesitation. The bunker felt less foreign now, but no less heavy. The air remained still, the silence almost deliberate. Noah moved straight toward the safe. He crouched in front of it, studying the lock. It wasn't electronic, mechanical, old, but not simple. His fingers traced the edges, feeling for wear, patterns, anything that might give him an advantage. Dad, he muttered, you really didn't make this easy. Atlas paced slowly behind him, then stopped, watching. Noah pulled a small tool from his pocket, something he had carried out of habit more than expectation. He worked carefully, methodically, his breathing steadying as his focus narrowed. Minutes passed, then a click, soft, but unmistakable. Noah froze for half a second, then slowly pulled the handle. The safe door opened with a low metallic groan. A faint rush of stale air escaped from inside. Noah leaned forward, shining his flashlight into the darkness, and then he saw it. Stacks, neatly packed bundles of cash, wrapped in old paper bands, layered across the interior shelves. Not recent, not fresh, but preserved. Noah stared at it, his expression unreadable. "This doesn't make sense," he whispered. He reached in, lifting one bundle carefully. The bills were real. Old, but real. His mind moved quickly, trying to connect it to what he had already seen. "Relocation money," he murmured. "Compensation that never reached the people." Atlas let out a low sound behind him. Noah set the cash aside and looked deeper. Behind the money were files, thicker, heavier, marked. He pulled one out, flipping it open. Photographs, documents, signatures, names. Victor Hale appeared more than once, not as he was now. Younger, standing beside officials, survey teams, construction crews. Noah's jaw tightened. This was never just land deals. He flipped through more pages. Records of forced acquisitions, altered documents, disappearances labeled as relocation delays, and signatures that connected everything. Victor wasn't just involved. He had been part of it from the beginning. Atlas moved closer again, his focus shifting toward something inside the safe. Noah followed his gaze, a smaller box, set apart from everything else. Metal, plain, unmarked. Noah reached for it slowly. Something about it felt different. He opened it carefully. Inside, a photograph, faded, edges worn. Noah's breath caught. It was him. As a boy, standing under the same tree, his father beside him, one hand resting on his shoulder. Noah sat back slightly, the image pulling something from deep inside his chest. Then he saw the rest. A military badge, old, his father's, and beneath it, a folded letter. Noah hesitated for a moment, then opened it. The handwriting was steady, familiar. His father's voice, written into every line. "Noah, if you are reading this, then something has already gone wrong." Noah's hands tightened slightly. "I never wanted you to find this place like this, but if you did, it means you came back when you had nowhere else to go." Noah exhaled slowly, eyes fixed on the page. "I found out what they were doing long before anyone else. The land wasn't just being bought, it was being taken. People were forced out, some disappeared, and no one asked questions. Victor Hale's name was there, not as a stranger, as a partner. I tried to report it, I tried to stop it, but I was warned. Not just for me, for you." Noah swallowed hard. "So I made a choice. I hid everything, every document, every name, every piece of proof. I built this place to survive long enough for the truth to matter. And I made sure only someone who understood how it was built could open it." Noah's eyes closed briefly. You were always meant to come back. Not because I wanted you to, but because I knew one day you wouldn't have anywhere else left to go. And when that day came, you would be strong enough to do what I couldn't. Noah's breathing slowed. "If you found this, then you already know what kind of man Victor Hale is. Be careful. He will not stop. But neither should you. Because this was never just about land. It was about people. And someone has to finish it." Noah lowered the letter slowly. The bunker felt different now. Not just a hidden place. A message. A warning. A responsibility. Atlas rested his head briefly against Noah's leg. Noah nodded once. "Yeah," he whispered. "I get it now." A distant sound broke the silence. Low, faint, but wrong. Noah looked up sharply. "Did you hear that?" Atlas's ears snapped forward. Another sound, closer this time, a crack, then smoke. Thin at first, then thicker, seeping down through the open hatch above. Noah stood immediately. "That's not rain!" He moved toward the ladder quickly, Atlas already ahead of him. They climbed fast. Noah pulled himself out of the hatch and froze. The forest was burning. Not a wildfire, controlled, deliberate. Lines of fire moving along the edges of the clearing, cutting off escape paths. The road, blocked, the trees closing in. Smoke thickened in the air. Noah's jaw tightened. "He's forcing us out!" Atlas barked sharply. Noah looked around quickly. No vehicles, no people, just fire. Victor wasn't trying to scare him. He was trying to trap him. Noah turned back toward the tree, the vent, the secondary tunnel. His mind moved fast. "Come on!" he called. Atlas didn't hesitate. They moved back toward the vent opening, the smoke growing thicker behind them. Noah dropped to his knees, clearing the dirt faster now, exposing the narrow entry point. "Not ideal," he muttered. Atlas slipped through first. Noah followed, forcing his body through the tight space, ignoring the pain in his leg as the heat grew stronger behind him. They crawled through darkness. Tight. Close. The sound of fire muffled above them. Then, space. The tunnel opened into a lower chamber. Connected. Designed. Noah pushed himself forward, breathing hard. They moved through the bunker again, this time toward the far side, where another exit might exist. Minutes felt longer than they were, but finally, a second ladder, a second hatch. Noah pushed it open. Fresh air rushed in. They climbed out into the forest, on the other side of the ridge, far from the fire, far from the trap. Noah stood there, breathing heavily, looking back toward the smoke rising above his land, his home, his father's secret, his past. Atlas stood beside him, silent, steady. Noah let out a long breath. "They want me gone." He paused, then shook his head slowly. Not happening. His eyes hardened. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about surviving. He was thinking about fighting back. The smoke from the burned ridge still lingered in the sky the next morning, drifting in long gray streaks above Pine Hollow. The town moved like nothing had happened, slow and routine. But there was something different in the air now. Something unsettled. Like a truth had been disturbed, and people could feel it without yet knowing why. Noah Carter drove into town just after sunrise, his old pickup coated in ash and dust from the night before. He wore the same green and black plaid shirt, sleeves rolled, collar slightly open, his face more defined now, harder. The exhaustion was still there, but it had changed shape. It wasn't defeat anymore. It was purpose. Atlas sat beside him, upright as always, his coat slightly singed at the edges, a reminder of how close they had come to being trapped. The dog's eyes moved constantly, scanning, calculating, aware. Noah parked in front of the small sheriff's office. The building was modest, one story, with faded paint and a flag that barely moved in the morning air. He stepped out slowly, his knees stiff but steady. Atlas followed without hesitation. Inside, the office smelled faintly of old paper and coffee. A man sat behind the desk, leaning back slightly in his chair. Sheriff Dale Mercer, mid-50s, broad-shouldered but carrying the weight of years poorly. His hair had thinned and turned gray, and his face was lined with the kind of fatigue that didn't come from physical work. His eyes were sharp, but cautious. Too cautious. He looked up as Noah entered. "Well," Mercer said, voice neutral. "Didn't expect to see you back so soon." Noah walked forward, placing a stack of documents on the desk. "You need to look at this." Mercer glanced down, then back up. "What is it?" "Evidence," Noah replied. Land seizures, missing people, fraud, names attached. Mercer didn't reach for the papers. Instead, he leaned back further, studying Noah carefully. "Where'd you get this?" Noah held his gaze. "From my land?" That was enough. Mercer's expression shifted slightly. Not surprise, recognition. He knew, or at least, he knew enough. "You should have left that place alone," Mercer said quietly. Noah's jaw tightened. "So you do know." Mercer sighed, rubbing a hand across his face. "Look, whatever you think you found—" "It's not what I think," Noah cut in. "It's what it is." Mercer finally glanced down at the papers, flipping one open slowly. His eyes scanned the page, then the next. For a moment, he hesitated. Then he closed the folder. "This isn't something I can act on," he said. Noah stared at him. "You're serious?" Mercer's voice lowered. "You don't understand how things work here." "No," Noah replied, stepping closer. "I think I do." The silence stretched. Mercer leaned forward slightly, voice barely above a whisper. "There are people involved in this. People who don't get questioned." Noah's eyes hardened. "So you're just going to ignore it?" Mercer didn't answer. That was answer enough. Noah picked up the folder slowly. "Then I'll find someone who won't." He turned and walked out. Atlas followed. Outside, the town looked the same, but Noah saw it differently now. Not as a place to survive, but as a place that had been quiet for too long. He stood in the center of the street for a moment, then made a decision. "Come on," he said softly. They walked toward the town square. It wasn't much. A small open space with a bench, a few storefronts, and a faded sign that welcomed people to Pine Hollow. A few residents had already gathered, starting their day. Conversations paused as Noah stepped into the center. He didn't raise his voice, didn't shout. He simply stood there and waited. People noticed, one by one. Then he spoke. "You all know who I am." Silence. "You know my father." A shift in the crowd. Eyes moving, some looking away, some remembering. Noah held up the documents. He wasn't just living on that land. No one interrupted. He was hiding something. A murmur moved through the group. Noah stepped forward. "They took land from people here. Forced them out. Some of them never made it out." A man near the edge of the crowd shifted uncomfortably. An older man stepped forward slowly. His name was Walter Briggs. Late 70s, thin but upright. His face deeply lined, eyes clouded but still sharp beneath the age. He wore a worn brown jacket and carried a cane, though he didn't seem to rely on it as much as he held onto it out of habit. Walter studied Noah carefully. "Your father," he said slowly. "He came to my house once." The crowd stilled. Noah turned toward him. "What did he say?" Walter's jaw tightened slightly. "Told me to leave. Said things weren't right. That people were disappearing." A woman near the front covered her mouth. Walter continued, voice quieter now. "I didn't believe him." Silence fell heavier. Then another voice spoke. A woman stepped forward. Sarah Miller. Early 40s, tall, slender, her dark hair pulled back tightly, her face pale but strong. Her eyes carried something deeper than fear. Loss, the kind that never really leaves. "My brother," she said. "He was on one of those lists." Noah's eyes moved to her. "He never came back," she added. The crowd shifted again. More voices now, quiet at first, then stronger. "My uncle, my neighbor, I remember. Piece by piece. The silence began to break. Not all at once, but enough. Noah didn't speak again. He didn't need to. The truth was moving on its own now. And then, a voice cut through it. Sharp, controlled. You've said enough. Victor Hale stepped into the square. He looked exactly the same as before. Calm, collected, but his eyes colder now. More exposed. You're making accusations you can't prove, he said, his voice carrying easily. Noah turned slowly. I already proved it. Victor smiled slightly. To who? A sheriff who knows better than to chase ghosts? A few people in the crowd hesitated. Doubt. Victor stepped forward, addressing them now. You're letting a man with nothing come back and rewrite your past, he said. Think about that. Noah didn't move, didn't react. He simply reached into the folder and pulled out one final document, a photograph. Victor, younger, standing beside officials, beside the site, beside the land. Noah held it up. Or we can talk about this. The silence hit harder this time. Victor's smile faded just slightly. Walter stepped forward again. That's him, he said. Sarah nodded slowly. I remember that face. Others followed. One voice, then another. Recognition, confirmation, truth. Victor's posture shifted. Not much, but enough. He glanced toward the edge of the square, and that's when the police arrived. Not Mercer, state officers, 2 vehicles, doors opening, boots hitting pavement. Victor turned, but it was too late. They had already seen enough, already heard enough. Noah stepped back slightly as the officers moved in. Victor didn't resist, but his eyes locked onto Noah. You think this ends here? He said quietly. Noah met his gaze. It already did. Victor was taken away in silence. No struggle, no shouting, just the quiet sound of something long buried, finally brought to light. The crowd didn't move for a while. Then slowly, they began to look at Noah differently, not as a stranger, not as a man who came back with nothing, but as someone who had uncovered something they had all chosen not to see. Walter stepped closer. Your father, he said, voice heavy. He tried to warn us. Noah nodded once. He did. Sarah looked down briefly, then back up. We should have listened. Noah didn't answer, because there was nothing to say. Some truths didn't need words. They just needed to be faced. Atlas stood beside him, still, steady, as he always had been. And for the first time since Noah returned, the town wasn't silent anymore. Autumn arrived slowly over Pine Hollow, laying gold across the hills and cooling the air into something clean and honest. The ancient tree stood at the center of Noah Carter's land, as it always had, branches heavy with leaves that whispered when the wind moved through them. The ground beneath it had been cleared now, not stripped, but cared for. The earth was leveled, stones arranged carefully, the space no longer forgotten. It had become something else, something remembered. Noah stood there in the early light, wearing his green and black plaid shirt, sleeves buttoned now against the cooler mornings, black jeans clean for once, brown leather shoes planted firmly in the soil that had nearly broken him. His face had changed in ways even he could feel. The weight hadn't disappeared, but it no longer bent him forward. It sat behind his eyes instead, quieter, steadier, shaped into something useful. Atlas lay a few feet away, stretched across the roots of the tree. The German shepherd had aged more in the past months than Noah expected. His once sleek coat had grown thicker for the cold, but faint streaks of gray now showed along his muzzle, The scar on his shoulder was more visible when he moved, and sometimes, when he stood too quickly, there was a slight hesitation in his step. But his eyes, they were unchanged, still sharp, still watching. "Morning, old man," Noah said quietly. Atlas lifted his head slightly, tail tapping once against the ground. Noah smiled faintly, then turned back toward the work. The money from the bunker had been counted, documented, and handed over, not to the state, not to any official system that had once failed the people of Pine Hollow, but to a fund Noah had created himself. It wasn't clean, it wasn't easy, but it was necessary. He worked with Maggie Collins, who had become something more than a cautious observer. She had stepped forward when no one else wanted to, organizing names, tracking families, reaching out to those who had lost land, lost homes, lost people. Maggie stood now near the edge of the clearing, a clipboard in her hand, her short silver hair moving slightly in the wind. She had changed, too. The guarded distance she once carried had softened, replaced by a quiet determination. She wasn't smiling often, but when she did, it felt real. "We confirmed 3 more families," she said, walking toward Noah. "1 in the next county, 2 further south. They didn't even know why they were forced out, just that it happened." Noah nodded slowly. "We'll add them to the list." Maggie studied him for a moment. "You could have walked away from all this." Noah glanced at the tree, then back at her. "Yeah, I could have. But you didn't." "No," he said simply. Maggie didn't press further. She just nodded and stepped back, marking something down on her clipboard before heading toward the truck parked near the road. The cabin behind Noah had changed as well. The roof had been repaired, the walls reinforced, the porch straightened. The water system was running again, not just for the house, but for parts of the surrounding land. A small network of pipes now extended outward, something Noah had built with his own hands, guided by the same engineering instincts that once took him across the world. But this time, it wasn't for war. It was for something that stayed. A voice called out from the edge of the clearing. "Noah!" He turned. Sarah Miller approached, her stride steady but her expression softer than it had been the first time they spoke. Her dark hair was no longer pulled tight, falling loosely over her shoulders. Her face still marked by loss, but no longer defined by it alone. She carried a small wooden box in her hands. "I found this," she said as she reached him. "It belonged to my brother. It was buried in what used to be our land." Noah took the box carefully. It was worn, edges smoothed by time. He opened it slowly. Inside, a photograph, 2 boys, standing in a field, smiling. Noah closed the box gently and handed it back. "He should have been here to take it himself," he said quietly. Sarah nodded, eyes lowering briefly. "He should have." There was a pause. Then she looked at the tree. "You're really going to leave it here?" Noah followed her gaze. At the base of the tree stood a simple wooden marker, not large, not polished, but carefully placed. "Yes," he said. Sarah stepped closer, reading the words carved into it. "For the man who tried to protect us, even when no one believed him." Her breath caught slightly. "That's for your father," she said softly. Noah nodded once. "It's for all of them." Sarah looked at him, then back at the tree. He knew, didn't he? Everything. "Yeah," Noah replied. "He just didn't have a way to make anyone listen." "And you did." Noah didn't answer immediately. Atlas shifted slightly, lifting his head, watching the two of them. "I just had the right moment," Noah said finally. Sarah studied him for a moment longer, then gave a small nod. "Well, I think he'd be proud of you." Noah's expression didn't change much, but something in his eyes did. She turned and walked back toward the road, leaving Noah alone with the tree again. The wind moved softly through the branches. Noah stepped forward and rested his hand briefly against the rough bark. It felt solid, unmoving, like it always had. "You kept it safe," he murmured. Behind him, Atlas stood slowly and moved closer, settling down again at the base of the tree, his body relaxed but his posture still protective. Time passed. Weeks turned into months. The town changed. Not quickly, not all at once, but steadily. People began to return to land they thought they had lost. Homes were repaired. Fields were cleared. Names that had been whispered in the past were spoken openly now. Sheriff Mercer stepped down quietly. No announcement, no explanation. Just gone. In his place came someone new. Deputy Rachel Hayes. Early 30s, tall, athletic, with sharp features and dark blonde hair tied back tightly. Her posture was precise, her movements efficient. She had transferred from a larger county after an incident no one in Pine Hollow fully understood, but it had shaped her, made her direct, uncompromising. She stood now near the edge of the clearing, watching Noah work on a section of pipe. "You don't make things easy, do you?" she called out. Noah glanced up briefly. "Never been my style." Rachel stepped closer, arms crossed loosely. "You know there are procedures for handling evidence like what you found?" Noah nodded. "I'm aware." "And you ignored them." He met her gaze. "I fixed the problem." Rachel studied him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled slightly. "Yeah," she said. "You did." She turned and walked back toward her vehicle. Atlas watched her go, then settled again. Winter came quietly. The tree stood bare now, its branches stripped but unbroken. Snow covered the ground in soft layers, muting the land into silence again. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was peaceful. Noah stood on the porch one morning, his flannel jacket pulled close against the cold, breath visible in the air. Atlas lay beneath the tree, still, watching, always watching. Noah stepped down and walked toward him slowly, his footsteps crunching lightly in the snow. "You still guarding it?" he asked. Atlas lifted his head slightly. Noah knelt beside him, resting a hand on the dog's neck. "You did good," he said quietly. Atlas's tail moved once, slow, content. Noah looked out across the land. It wasn't broken anymore. It wasn't something to escape from. It was something he had built. Something he had chosen. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a man who had lost everything. He felt like a man who had finally found where he belonged. Some stories aren't about finding treasure. They're about finding what was never truly lost. Noah returned with nothing. No home, no family, no future he could see. But through quiet strength, truth, and the unwavering loyalty of a dog who never walked away, he discovered something far greater than money. He found purpose, he found healing, and he found a way to turn pain into something that could restore others. Atlas, the German Shepherd, was never just a companion. He was a guide, a protector, and in many ways, a quiet miracle. In the darkest moments when Noah was ready to give up, it was Atlas who led him forward, reminding us that loyalty is not just an emotion, but a force that can change a life. And maybe, just maybe, Some things are not coincidence. Maybe God places certain souls beside us at the exact moment we need them most, not to speak, not to explain, but simply to stay. And sometimes that is enough to save a man. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for sharing this journey. Wherever you are today, I hope you find a moment of peace, a reason to keep going, and someone, human or not, who reminds you that you are never truly alone.